This is when I type. Oh, hello, I didn't see you there. My name is Abe Hunter, and I'm the founder of the Lead Society, and I'm here with my trusty co-host and friend, Richard Olarsaba from sunny Florida. Hi, Richard.
Hey, hey, hey.
Richard, who do we have with us tonight?
We have two of the most amazing people I've had the pleasure of getting to know over the years. Wonderful bass, Matt Boehler, and
Whoa!
I,
He's on the Jim Cramer sound effects tonight.
he has a whole Foley table. You don't encourage him.
Awooga, awooga.
Oh my goodness. Well, that's a good start.
that's
Wow.
this is the Lead Society difference, everyone.
We take ourselves very seriously, clearly. No, but in all honesty, these are two amazing singers, internationally renowned, sung at some of the biggest opera houses across the world. But is a composer, and Tracy has an incredible background in artistry. Like she has her own jewelry line, but also is a big social advocate and activist. And just a little background for everyone. Matt actually has several compositions like already out there performed, has one in the works that we're going to discuss tonight. And Tracy and I had the pleasure of working together not only for the 2013 Met Finals, yay, but there it is. I was like, but we didn't win.
We were the grand losers.
Thank
I
you.
use it on my resume all the time.
You know,
No,
and
but
that guy, that trombone player, just waits for
Right.
me to give him the signal.
Amazing. So committed.
no, but Tracy and I did a project together associated with Wolf Trap Opera when they were presenting their production of The Rape of Lucretia, and they did several presentations, and there was one project where Tracy like got to show off her slam poetry skills. She's quite good.
Oh my God, I love it.
Thank you. That was such a cool project. Wolf Trap is
Oh.
so good at creating works and then creating context around those works. And I admire that so much.
So just to hit it off, Matt, from singer, really good career still going. How did the composition come into the the scope of things?
Hope it's still going. We're
It's still going.
yeah, it's still going. We're all in this sort of state of suspended animation right now. Yeah. Well, composing is something that I had done when I was a theater major in undergrad, and it was something that I had done there. I did a little bit of it in high school, and then I wrote incidental music for other students' shows in college. But then shortly after that, I started pursuing a career as an opera singer, and I was doing a lot of on the job learning.
Hmm.
I was an apprentice with Minnesota Opera for a good number of years, and I think while I was there, this sort of here we are in classical music, and we have busts of these composers that are like on our pianos and such, and a score is holy writ. It's like this text that must be pored over and observed and revered. And I just developed a real complex around writing. I think like after a while, I discovered it's something that a lot of creative artists who are writers also have. Just sort of what could I possibly say that Mozart didn't say 250 years ago and better and whatnot. And it wasn't until many years later when I was over in Switzerland. I was working at St. Gallen. I had a fest contract over there, and we had the summers off. We got paid to be off for the summers, and there was a program in. I was always writing a little bit, and like back when I was in New York, I would live in New York for a while. I started getting curious, so I was reaching out to friends. I took a few night classes over at Juilliard, and then when I was over in Paris, there was a program where you could study in Paris for the summer, and it was there that I met my teacher that I'd eventually go to grad school. I took 2 years off of singing to go to the San Francisco Conservatory and study with David Conti. I got my master's in composition, and things went from there. So I've been juggling both. That's how it happened. It happened, and then it went underground for a very long time until it couldn't help but bubble up anymore, and then it came back.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, just as a, I wonder, like, for any young singers who have that interest, or especially to like dabble in that, what would you maybe just suggest? Like, I don't know, just follow your passion, and even if singing is kind of a mainline thing, just like write, like find a way to do it.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Don't do drugs and stay in school. Or no, absolutely. I mean, um, uh, I am so grateful. I mean, I'm so. First of all, you have both myself and Tracy, but there are a lot of other folks here in the business right now. Whereas I think once upon a time, it was this joke if you were like, say, an actor slash something else. But here we all are. And if there's any other part, even if you decide you don't want to compose all the time, it can't help but inform other areas of your art. I feel like I become a better singer because I compose, and I feel like I'm a better composer because I know what it's like to be on stage and have had to, by proxy, memorize a lot of things. Man, for anybody who wants to write, I would just say listen to as much as you can. Just listen and listen, and the things that you like, commit them to memory, and then just write a lot. That's probably the best. I mean, that's what Philip Glass said. If you want to learn how to write, you learn by writing. That's what Neil Gaiman says too. So yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, Tracy, as I said before, your activist hat is one that I have so much mad respect for. As I said, for the audience and the context, this project that we worked on in association with Wolf Trap's presentation of Rape of Lucretia, your slam poetry was actually catering to what this project was, which was addressing domestic abuse, the obvious subject of like, the work like rape as well, and just like how it is contextualized. And how did you get into activism, and how did you like really find a voice for that?
Well, it's been a very kind of personal journey that's been intertwined with my experience in the industry. Um, I have always been a fat person, and growing up uh, in the industry, meaning, in school and then in young artist programs, the advice in general for me was if you want to serve your talent, if you want to be a star, you have to change your body in order to be on stage. So I really believed that for a long time. I really tried. I gained and lost hundreds of pounds. And it was kind of through my political education and my education around the science of weight stigma, the science of chronic weight dissatisfaction, and how many of the kind of health risks that we traditionally associate with fatness itself can be more directly correlated to weight stigma and yo-yo dieting. And so I had this kind of epiphany of that came through fat liberation community, and really understanding that I have the right to make art, and that I was not going to continue to harm my body under this kind of belief that I needed to serve my art. And that was a really big shift for me. And I really believe that speaking truth to power is uh, the pathway to not only serving yourself but serving your art. So that's really been, the more that I speak up about my experience and my identity, the more that has led to an abundance of connections and like artistic projects and just really exciting kind of ability to show up authentically as an artist and actually give this gift of my talent and who kind of houses the talent, which is me.
Yes. And I've always loved like your body affirmation in all its facets, like between your own platform speaking on it, as well as the project that you and our friend Matt Angel put together, Angry Fat People, which was an amazing series.
Thank you.
And really kind of just brings into perspective like the reality of it all, and which is a big reason why I think it's so important that both of you are here, because of the work that you guys are doing together on Matt's new chamber opera that you are starring in. And before we really get into that, this piece is being produced and processed through the Victory Hall Opera, correct?
Yes, Victory Hall Opera, fantastic company in Charlottesville, Virginia. It is run by two of the most thoughtful people in the business, Brenda Patterson and Miriam Gordon Stewart. And such, truly, isn't there a longer one? There should be.
Okay,
Play,
guys.
play, play.
Okay, guys. Can you do it once more? Do you have one more in you?
There you go.
Oh.
I have to pay them per applause.
Oh,
Oh, that makes sense.
So this will be a good show.
Very
make it
expensive show.
I know it's being produced, and we just had a workshop with Victory Hall a couple months ago. We went through the last half of the show, typical workshop, found out a lot of stuff that's wonderful and works, and found out what doesn't. And I am writing the show as we speak. F sharp. There we go. Wondering where that inspiration came from.
Make sure for Abe though, like you add in a couple Agagic accents, because
Yes.
those are important.
By the way, I'm sure neither of you have had time to listen to any previous episodes, but I'm obsessed with the Agagic accent. So,
Yeah.
if you want this to go far,
Yeah. You gotta get a Gajic.
Chapter 6.
Okay.
Life in music. No, Victory Hall is a company in Charlottesville, Virginia. They are in their 5th year, and their focus is on chamber work. But one of the most remarkable things about the company itself is that it is singer-driven. Not only are Brenda and Miriam fantastic singers in their own right with their own storied careers, but they wanted to found a company where the singers drove the agenda. And so there is a core ensemble called a troupe of us, and they take into account the talents that they have and what everybody brings to the table, not just as a singer. Perhaps they're, if you always wanted to do a role, they're like, oh, well, let's talk about that in the future, see what we could do. Perhaps you've wanted to direct. I mean, I think or in this case, they found out they have a composer in their midst.
now how do you keep all those pesky pianists out of the picture?
Oh, we hire a team of people to whistle the score. It saves so much money with the pianist. I mean, pianists only have 10 fingers, but people can whistle multiple notes. Yeah. No, they have a wonderful they have a lot of wonderful associates who are, I believe they have a coach who a accompanist, a collaborative pianist who they have just brought on this year as part of the team as well. So, yeah. So that is, let's see, that's the company itself. I believe you asked about Victoria.
Yeah. And so you've had previous compositions premiered through Victory Hall, and so good relationship. When it came to this current project you're working on, Fat Pig, what I mean, you always think about like what is the original pitch? Like, where did the impetus for this idea come from? And either Matt or Tracy, if you want to answer this.
Can I speak to it, Tracy?
Yeah, please. Yeah.
Yeah, so actually, it really was Brenda and Miriam's brainchild. Brenda had seen Neil Butte's play on Broadway in New York and had always had it in her mind as something that would be enhanced incredibly by music. And so they pitched it to me. I was very, very grateful. I wrote a sort of we tried each other out a couple years ago. I wrote an evening length song cycle called Marginalia with them, and they liked it enough that we wanted to continue the relationship. So we started talking about a full length opera, and they brought this script to me, and it's one of those. It would not be an obvious choice. When I first saw it, I was a little taken aback, but there's so much humanity and so much love, and there's so many opportunities to do things that haven't been done on the opera stage before that it's really exciting. Yeah, so that's the genesis of the process, and it is not just my opera. Miriam Gordon Stewart is the librettist, and she's fantastic. She's done a lot of wonderful work, not only distilling a 90-minute play down into a 90-minute opera, but expanding, leaving room like all good librettists do, leaving room for expansion, leaving room for music, but also creating opportunities for inner life in characters that really cried out for a little bit more examination.
Mm,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
And Tracy, how did you come into the into the mix of all this?
Well, dear Miriam wrote me and said that one of the troupe members who is in the cast, Will Ferguson, had they had been kind of on the search for someone to sing this role, and he had kind of been following me where I do some activist work on Instagram and Sparkle Jams, and he kind of like brought me to the attention of Miriam and Brenda, and then Miriam kind of pitched me on the project, and what she emphasized immediately was that she and Brenda had been had seen this as a hole in the repertoire, where there is no representation for fat people or identity or experience in an authentic way outside of something where it's being made fun of.
Hmm.
And So they had been kind of like wanting to find the piece to serve this, especially as Miriam's a dramatic soprano, and there are a lot of fat dramatic soprani, and most of the time we live in this kind of existence where we're just trying to be acceptable enough to be allowed to be on stage.
That's how
And
I feel as a host.
yeah, um, and this project aimed to serve that idea of actually creating something where their existence is invited, and a crucial part of the piece cannot exist without them.
Yes. Um, so just for like a little context, for those of us that haven't read through the script or seen the play, how best would you just like sum up the arc of the show and kind of like what we could eventually see in the opera?
Well, why don't I give a stab at it, and then you can chime in. So Tom and Helen meet, and Helen is a visibly fat woman, and they fall in love. They have some really charming intimacy. And so it's grounded in this very kind of authentic, lovely thing that just kind of happens. And throughout that, we see these kind of glimmers of liberation from Helen, where she kind of names it. She says, okay, don't pretend I'm not fat. I'm fine with myself. Just be honest. Like, let's just be honest with each other. And she really is kind of the protagonist in that way, in that I mean, the story very much centers on Tom and his decisions, but Helen is definitely the one that you are rooting for, and because of the pressures of Tom's colleague Carter and his ex-girlfriend Jeannie, both who are, I would describe as being violently fat phobic, with the language that they use, with how they talk about Helen, how they talk about their own family and their own bodies. Um, it comes to this like crux where Tom really just cannot deal with the reality of dating a fat person. So the reality of that like violent fat phobia that fat people experience every day, this is kind of a common experience for us, where someone will be willing to date us like in the closet basically, but will not do it publicly because it can be a lot to deal with. And so it comes to this moment where he says he can't do it. And then there's going to be a clip later on where we can discuss kind of what happens from there.
Excellent. Well, and you kind of brought it up. We actually have a clip from an earlier point in the show. Could you set that up for us?
You want to
Oh,
take that, Matt?
yeah, sure. We're going to see a clip that features the fantastic Sarah Wolfson, a soprano, and she's playing the role of Jeannie, who is Tom, played by Keith Ferris. You will not see him in this scene. Also at the piano, we have the fantastic Renata Rolfing. We are so lucky. We had such a good team. We have such a wonderful team. And so what we're going to see is a clip from scene 4. There's a bit of an awkward blow up at the office. So Tom's co-workers, as Tracy said, are kind of relentless and ruthless with their sort of I don't know, ridicule of Tom and of Helen. And Tom never really comes out of the closet and says that he is dating Helen in front of his co-worker Jeannie, who he's sort of been dating, but never really said that they weren't dating. He's sort of a proof rock. He's a Tom. He's a passive aggressive to a fault. He's obsessed with other people's opinions about him. So there's an awkward blow up at the beginning of the scene where Jeannie confronts Tom and basically tries to catch him and say, "Are you dating? Are you dating Helen?" And he doesn't admit to it. She leaves, but later on she comes back in the scene. She knows what's going on, and she gives him what for. And this is the second half of her aria. I have to mention the setting of the show takes place in the late '90s in Tampa. It's very specific where we go. It's importantly specific. So in this aria, when she's sort of letting Tom have it, she's also recounting how they first met. And this is some of my favorite of Miriam's lyrics in the show. Is this sort of John Hughesian carnival of '90s references, talking about how they met.
Yes.
Now is Tom from Minnesota? Because he sounds like, is he a transplant to Florida?
He might be.
All right.
Yeah.
May I play the clip?
Please, by all means.
Very good.
In the third round, you squeeze past me, although As we broke into sea world and kissed.
Yes. I see why you have to say it's specifically in Tampa, because if you broke into SeaWorld in like St. Louis, everyone would be like, huh?
What? Oh, no, the end of the show also takes place at the seaside on the beach, so it is important that it needed to be somewhere, where there was ocean front accessible. But yeah, one of the things about great things about working with Victory Hall, but also well, they encourage. I get to write these roles since it's a small opera. I get to write these roles for these singers. And Sarah Wolfson, one of the things that she told me right away is that she loves text. So I'm like, all right, here we go. And she also said she loves music theater. So it's so when I started writing that number, I had in mind, all right, we're in the 90s, maybe I'll go for like Tori Amos, Little Earthquakes, But
Yes.
it ended up sounding more like Burt Bacharach with some Claire de Lune in it. So that's what we stuck with.
There you go. You know what? Like, I hope that goes like on like like the CD insert.
Yeah.
It's like a little Burt Bacharach mixed with. Yes. No, but like hearing you guys talk about this piece, listening to it, and it's incredibly contemporary, and it's very just like every day. It's from much of what we know of opera, it's grand. It's this huge thing. We're talking about these huge sets. You think of Aida, like Rigoletto, that kind of stuff. But then when you think about like people, you even still have this like air of grandeur, like even like in the Verismo with like Bohème and all those kind of things. Like these are very common people, but it's told in a very grand way. But from the way that just listening to that last aria, it's incredibly vernacular for like American identity, and I love that. And kind of to what you were saying, Tracy, like the relationships, like we're yes, it's Tom's story, but we're really kind of focusing on Helen. It is Bohem esque with this idea. It's like we're actually following Mimi's story a little closer. We're actually rooting for her the entire time, and how incredible it is to really just bring up a topic that is so everyday, but I think we would all agree that a lot of us just kind of say, yes, I've seen it. Yes, I've heard about it, but I don't address it unless it has to come up. And, for a lot of people, even they're like, I maybe even just like, sweep it under the rug and not address, sizeism and addressing like, like you said, like fat phobia, because to even refer to it as such is kind of jarring for a lot of people. I think they're just like, if I see like The Biggest Loser, oh, I'm along for the ride. But it's like, it's so much bigger than that. And it's not that only scratches the surface of like the actual condition of living in that kind of thing. So what, I know that the story gets like even better over the course of the show, but especially with your political background, the activism, like what are you wanting to really show an audience and show essentially like the repertoire, what a this specific story can actually like provide for the larger population?
Well, yeah. Well, as you kind of hit on, and I love so much about that aria that we just heard, is what it demonstrates about what Jeannie's character is going through in relation to Tom. And I think that's part of the brilliance of what Miriam has done in taking this Neil LaBute play, which one of the main criticisms he gets is about it's completely about the men and the women are just like very peripheral. And Miriam really kind of took that and really developed the women in a really more nuanced, more rich way. I think, and one of the ways we see that is Jeannie in that aria. She's saying like, what do you want from me, dude? Like, I got a Brazilian wax. I got a spray tan. I have been starving myself on this diet. Like, I've literally been doing everything for you in all these steps that I've been taught that I am supposed to do to get you to desire me. And you're telling me not only do you not desire me, but you desire this fat girl. And so there's like this bubbling rage with Jeannie that is so, I mean, it's fun. It's fun because she's so kind of like really feeling that. But it also is so relatable, for the modern woman of like trying to fit into all these kind of things that she's supposed to do. And then for some of us, then rebelling against that. But to your question that you asked me, it is, well, first of all, I can't tell you how just different this experience is for me to come into the room, just to come into the workshop for the first time in my life where I wasn't worried about what the production team was going to think about what I looked like in the room. And that's what I experience every time I go to work. Every time I go to work. And, I'm hoping that I will be acceptable enough to be allowed to remain there. That's just a fact. But secondly, this piece isn't representative of all fat people. We are not a monolith. Helen ends up making a choice that I personally would never make. But the point is that there has never been an opera featuring a fat person as the romantic lead. There has never been an opera that features the fat experience as something real and serious and something worthwhile, something worth talking about, something that's part of the human experience. And so Fat Pig endeavors to humanize this fat character. And then part of the reason I think that this piece is so effective and successful is that we see the humanity of Helen, and then we see the deep cruelty of what she experiences from the world. And that's one of the first things that I said when we sat down for the workshop to the cast. I said, like, I want to be really clear that this fat phobic language where Jeannie calls her a fat sow, like all kinds of stuff that is violent, I said, this is not abstract. None of this is an exaggeration. I get called this stuff walking down the street. I get called this stuff by directors. Like, it's not something that is an exaggeration from my experience. So in this piece, being able to see her humanity and then how she's dehumanized in all these very kind of complicated ways. And then what that leads her to end up doing in this case because of what her priorities are. It's really important, and it's beyond me. It's, I don't know, like fat people, like we deserve to be on stage and we deserve to see ourselves on stage.
And to that point, you and I had talked earlier that not only is just like this is an inclusive story or that it's representational of like real life, but even just from like the microcosm of theater to actually say like this is not a type that we're just trying to fulfill with X actor. It's like you need to have this character represented accurately. So it's not just how we've come to know like a lot of operas and stuff like that. You and I have talked about like Falstaff. You can put a fat suit on somebody because they can sing the role, but in this context, like for this particular piece, it's like, come on, guys, like let's just actually find somebody that actually fits the role. Because
now I'm curious to know what does fat mean? Where's the what?
Right. So within kind of fat liberation community, first of all, we endeavor to take the word back. So it's something that's just a neutral descriptive word like tall or thin or blonde or whatever. And secondly, there are like rating systems for like a, what's it called, like this fat spectrum, something that was developed by Ash of the Fat Lip podcast, which is widely used in fat liberation circles now, which identifies that even within fatness there is a huge spectrum of different sizes. And depending on where you fall on that spectrum, your experience in the world is vastly different.
Mm.
So just speaking from like women's size categories, we have small fat, which starts at like women's size 14 and goes about to 18. And then we have mid fat, which is 18 to 24. Then super fat, 24 to 28, 30. I might be like missing those by a little bit. I'm in what's called the super fat category. And then we have infinifat, which is everything above super fat. So someone who's small fat for sure experiences, unsolicited commentary about their body, has a different access level to clothing. But someone who's super fat or someone who's infinifat has to buy 2 seats on the plane. Sometimes can't fit through a public subway turnstile. There's all this kind of public infrastructure that is quite literally hostile to fat people, is designed to be inaccessible. So to answer your question, there's a wide spectrum of fatness.
And if for our audience and everything, would you, off the top of your head, have a good resource for anybody who wants to educate themselves?
Sure. Yeah, you can actually if you go to my Instagram, you can find my link tree there that has a lot of different resources, but one of them includes something called the Fat Lib Resource Library that I created. And it's just an Airtable of a bunch of resources on the topic. So you could start there. It's going to lead you to a lot of peer-reviewed research around some of the topics I've talked about, including weight stigma and chronic weight dissatisfaction, the science behind why intentional weight loss efforts end in failure over 90% of the time, as well as just kind of fat liberation resources. There's been kind of a renaissance in the fat liberation movement in the last 10, 20 years. So there are so many books, so many shows, so many podcasts. There's a ton of resources out there if this is something that resonates with you.
Awesome.
I applaud it, and it's about time. It certainly, I can't speak for my male colleagues on the show here, but as a gay man, weight and weight issues have been something that is pervasive in the community, and for you to address it head on and in such a honest way is just fantastic.
Mm-hmm. And to bring it back to the work, we have another clip, and this is Helen's big moment, as you kind of told us. Before we hear it, can you kind of put it into context for us?
Yes. So I would say, and I don't know if you agree, Matt, I would say this is the most intense and kind of devastating part of the show. What happens is, this is kind of the breakup conversation. So they're at the beach and Helen kind of notices something's kind of off. It's like the company picnic, and they're kind of off to the side. And, she says to him, your desire for me has been so important, so healing. It feels like a gauze that protects me, that heals my wounds. It's so important to me that if this would maintain your desire, then I would staple my stomach. I would go on a restriction diet. I would get a gastric bypass. And it's the last thing you want her to do in that moment. And this is a very controversial moment, frankly. And why? I mean, when I first read it, I had to sit with it, because that's not the decision I would ever make. But you as the audience, having spent all this time rooting for her and understanding what she's experiencing, um, it you realize she's trying to find a way for the burden of this oppression to be lifted from her. She doesn't know how to lift it, and all she knows is she wants to maintain the desire of this man. And I find it, reading it, listening to it, just absolutely devastating, which is a radical thing because there's a hell of a lot of people in the world who, under normal circumstances, would say, "Great, staple your stomach, good for you,"
Mm-hmm.
And that's not what you feel in this moment.
Should I press play?
Sure.
Oh,
Wow. Whew.
That's
Good job, you guys.
that's
Thanks.
amazing.
Good job,
I,
Matt.
That was
I don't have to live that. You have to live that, Tracy. Yeah.
listen. That's one of the most powerful things I've seen. Period.
Thank you.
I mean,
Yeah. It's
yeah, I mean, let's just face it. Any time that we're discussing any marginalization of any kind of person in society, having it thrust into like a very visible place, it forces all of us to kind of address it in ourselves and say, okay, let's how do I relate to this? And what I think what's very important, and we've mentioned this on the show before, especially in light of the pandemic, we've really had the opportunity to really kind of reevaluate where we are as a community, as a society, and really choose now, because this has kind of been a big halt for all of us, that we can actually choose to say, okay, what is essential? What do I find to be important to me, to the people around me, the people I care about? And we've been able to see this, especially in theater and opera, where marginalized communities or very specific stories of marginalization are brought to light. In the Black community, in the Asian community, in the LGBTQ community, there are small strides. And quite frankly, Tracy, you kind of mentioned this before, that when it comes to being fat or knowing someone who is, like, how we have not seen that on stage put to music. And I think it's really important work that you guys are a part of. And as you said, Matt, like, this is still a work in progress. And
hold on. F
oh,
sharp.
G sharp.
And could I recommend an Agogic accent on beat 3 in measure 45?
You gotta get a Gogic.
So when can we expect Fat Pig to hit the stage in whatever facet that would mean?
It is programmed in the 21-22 season of Victory Hall Opera. Like all companies, we have to see what happens with the world. But it is definitely going to be on the season. I'll be finishing up the score very shortly, and we'll be, looking at it again and doing some revisions. And yeah, it's going to be on the season next year with the cast that we have in the workshop with, of course, Tracy. And you already saw Sarah Wolfson, Keith Ferris, and Will Ferguson. And yeah, it's coming up.
And the whistle chorus. Are you writing a whistle chorus?
For rehearsal purpose, yeah, it is scored for a chamber ensemble of 6 players, so 4 singers, 6 players.
Excellent. And so, as we kind of talked about it, this, for a lot of people is a touchy subject and might be turned off by the subject matter. How would you persuade these people, whoever they may be, whether they admit it to themselves or not, how would you persuade them that this is something that needs to be added to the repertory, as it were, or have it at least be a stepping stone for musical theater, especially operatic? Because let's face it, like, we have the worst rap in the world when it comes to sizeism. Everyone equates the big fat lady to opera, and it's like, that's great, but come on, let's be serious about this. How would you talk to those kind of people when it comes to this work and say, this is not something to be scared of?
Well, thank you for that question. That is really an important thing to be asking when faced with this piece, and asking just our industry in general. I have different pitches for every group. So I'll try not to break it all up. But I would say, first of all, that this is a marginalized group that is purposefully left off of opera stages. Opera, whereas Hollywood and even Broadway have managed to become more progressive around inclusivity of body size in the last 10, 20 years. opera has managed to become more regressive around body size. There's been this kind of industry um, adage that, you know, the way we're going to sell tickets is by trying to monetize the ideal female body and male body as a way to get butts in seats. And I would say that that is so fundamentally just wrong headed. If you're trying to sell tickets, the average American woman's dress size is an 18. They want to see themselves on stage. If you think that they don't, you're nuts. And so, if you don't care about fat people, I'm pretty sure you care about selling tickets. Secondly, um, fat talent deserves to be seen and to be honored. And when we don't, when we disallow it as a matter of course, we are literally losing talent. We are sucking talent out of this industry. People are dropping like flies for a myriad of reasons, but there's only so much trauma you can endure around your body before you say F it. So I would say if you're interested in preserving and honoring the talent in this industry, you would be interested in honoring this and centering this subject. So that's my
Yes.
elevator pitch there.
Oh my
Yes.
God. Hold on. Studio audience?
So, like you said, this has become kind of like an industry standard of saying, like, oh, we need to see certain people on stage. They're going to move when they're going to move. Like we've kind of seen how the industry is trying to change in certain directions. What would you suggest to audiences? Because let's face it, like it's supply and demand. If the demand is there, how best to address that from the audiences? Because I think we've talked about this on the show as well when we're talking about cultivating operatic audiences. These days we're having to do a lot of the work ourselves. Like the companies can only have so much reach, and we as artists, we as contributors to the arts, it's kind of incumbent on us to say, this is what you should be seeing. This is what interests us. This is what represents us, and we represent you. Like we're a part of the community. So to encourage audiences to demand that kind of inclusivity and representation in theater, especially operatic theater, do you have any words to them?
I feel like I'm talking too much, Matt, but I have things to say.
No, actually,
I'm
we're
listening.
keep talking. Matt's
um,
fine.
I think one of the things I love most about fat liberation is this kind of chain reaction thing that happens that is so real, where we are given fat people are given visibility, and there's this light bulb moment, like visibility with so many other marginalized groups, but specifically fat talent, fat beauty, fat vanity, fat art, fat culture. When we see it, something happens where we go, oh my God, I can be cool and powerful and in a fat body at the same time. And it literally creates this like voracious appetite for more of that, for wanting to see that in yourself, for wanting to consume that art. And so I think, not to be corny, but if we build it, they will come. They want to
Well,
see
and
it.
also for it to be acceptable to find that attractive, right?
Which so many people do.
I
Not,
mean,
I mean, you
I
can't have
know,
this
I know
many
that.
fat women with like the children are still being born
Yes,
somehow.
yeah, right.
There's no lacking. True. Amazing. I'm trying to think, like, this is, it's going to be 90 minutes, and I think it's going to have such an impact. And, I think a huge wave of the future for opera is in chamber, because you can condense down these huge, like, aspects of society, of, like, the human condition, and say, like, this is what it feels like. You're experiencing it for 90 minutes, but there are people out there that have their entire lives defined by this every day. Um,
Well, there's something visceral too, isn't there, Richard? Like when you're close to the and you can see the athleticism of what is happening on stage. It's thrilling, and I think yeah, I mean, all of us have been experiencing entertainment through these little rectangles. We want to be close.
Speak for
I think
yourself.
we crave to be close. That's yeah, I mean, chamber opera. Not only is it more practical, but I think it's something that people are craving as well. It's you mentioned earlier there were that we're so used to opera having giant sets and full of royalty. But one of the things that you mentioned also was that you noticed the vernacular in this piece, and not only is this piece deal with issues, but it deals with uh, human beings who are complex. I'm not comparing myself to Verdi at all here, but
Wait, hold
Don
on. I
Carlo.
don't have a toot toot sound effect here.
No, but no, I wouldn't. Um, but say Don Carlo is full of these kings and queens and royalty who are incredibly complex characters and make terrible choices. They make awful choices. And that is there. That is this story. We have incredibly complex people who don't always make the best choices, and that makes for good drama, but it also makes for complicated storytelling. The our theater experience does not end when the curtain goes down. It extends beyond that. I always think about, I mean, I've been living with these characters for a while. I think often, wow, what happens to these folks after the curtain goes down? I mean, love walks in, like real love walks in through the door for Helen and Tom, and love is transformative. It changes you. It opens up things that you opens up doors that you never thought possible, and even if it's thwarted or cut short, it changes people. I mean, the story is essentially, not only is it about fatness, and not only is it about being an outsider, not only is it about deciding what kind of person you want to be in the world, but it's also about love. I mean, if we're being honest, ultimately, this story is Romeo and Juliet. I mean, this is not a new story in that respect.
No, it's true. Yeah.
But that was also one of the things that, like, the more and more I read the script, that I'm so glad that Brenda and Miriam intuited and sensed from this right away, is that there's an incredible amount of love in this story. There's a lot of cruelty, absolutely, but there's a lot of love in this story. And to quote Dionne Warwick and Burt Bacharach, that's what the world needs right now. Love.
Well, I think we can all agree, based upon the clips we heard. I mean, certainly. Well, I'll just speak for myself. I mean, I felt it. The love is there, and
Thank you.
incredibly thoughtful, in a thoughtful way. Um, you guys, we've burned through an hour here.
Already?
Wow.
No. To a hard-hitting question, Richard, if you don't mind.
Of course.
No, Tracy, is that original Wheel of Fortune tinsel?
Drapery.
Yes, I bid for it on eBay. And
That's been touched by Vanna White?
my Party City aesthetic. Thank you for noticing.
Category is
Okay, guys.
an after.
This is where we have fun. We this is enough seriousness for one night. This is where we give our shout outs. And so I'm going to play our theme music, and everyone just follow your heart and talk to whomever you'd like. Oops, that was not the one I wanted to play. There we go.
Do your pets, everybody.
Yeah, spade and neuter your pets. Tracy.
Well, shout out to Victory Hall
Yeah.
thank you for putting this all together with you guys.
Victory Hall, thank you for producing a work that is, I'm sure, will be long part of the canon in the future.
Miriam and Brenda. You are the legends.
Shout out to the fantastic singers and pianists that we heard tonight. So we heard, of course,
Yes.
Tracy, but props to Sarah and props to Renata as well. They're all fantastic.
Well, thank you both for joining us tonight. And Tracy, I'll take an A. I'll buy an A.
Got it.